Okay, I'm sure everybody here knows me. I am Chopper Charlie, and I am the badass biker your mama warned you about. I'll tell you a little bit of a softness of the hard-ass biker. This summer, when I was up on Shadow Lake in Ohio, my baby daughter Megan spotted 2 feral cats. They're just little kittens. And she said, "Dad, can we feed them and kind of tame them down a little bit? And maybe if we can tame them down, we can take them in and get them spayed and neutered. And that way they won't just keep adding more cats to the park because they've been trapping them and hauling them off." So I said, sure, that'd be a nice father-daughter project. So we started feeding the 2 little kittens. And one of the little kittens I thought was a little boy, we named Randy with a Y. And the other one we named Heidi. Well, after they grew up a little bit and we turned them upside down and looked, it looked like Randy with a Y was a Randy with an I. So we took them to get them spayed, and we bought a certificate, and we were supposed to convalesce about 10 days. So we kept them in the house for about 10 days, and then we opened the door and let them back outside. And so there was this badass biker with 2 little kittens living in the RV with me. So we let them outside, and about the first or second day, there's a lot of tomcats in that park. About the first or second day, I saw that when a tomcat would come around, Randy would just ignore it. But Heidi would hike her butt up, and she was ready to rock and roll. I'm going, what is this? It's a good thing we had this kid spayed. So after about 2 or 3 times of this, I called the vet up and I said, don't understand this. Well, they said sometimes when you get them spayed, they do that. So I told Megan, I said, I think we're going to have to change Heidi's name from Heidi to Heidi the Hoe. A few years back, 3 of us old boys from Texas was headed over on Route 90 along the Mexican border, headed up the Big Bend country. It was a hot and windy summer day. We got riding up that way, and all of a sudden the winds kicked up and the terrible, terrible dust storms. So we got to the point, couldn't see no more. It was sandblasting us, it was sandblasting the bikes. So we looked up, and here was a entrance to a ranch called Flying C. So we thought, we got to get some shelter. So we went back this lane on the Flying C, got back there, went up, knocked on the door, and a nice looking lady come to the door. We said, we're stranded out here in this storm. Is there any way we could use the barn or one of your work sheds to get our bikes and get them out of the store, out of the weather? And she said, yes, there is. So I looked at her and I said, wow, you know, typical Chopper Charlie. I said, you are one pretty lady. She said, well, I'll let you 3 guys stay here in the house because it looked like the storm was going to range about all night. But she said, I'm recently widowed, and she said all the neighbors would talk. So she said, I appreciate it if you guys would just stay in the barn. So a buddy of mine, he said, okay. He said, we'll just stay in the barn. So we go out to the barn, we park the Harleys, we close the barn doors. So about 9 months and 3 days later, my buddy Road Rash gets a letter in the mail from Comstock, Texas. So he opens up the letter. It took him a little while to figure out what's going on, and after a little bit he figures it out. This letter is from the lawyer or the attorney of the lady that we had spent the night at her ranch at the Circle C. So he gets a hold of me and he comes over and he said, Chopper, he said, do you remember that lady out there at the Circle C ranch where we spent the night during that dust storm? And I said, yes, I do. He said, now tell me, did you get up in the middle of the night and go up to the ranch house and pay her a conjugal visit? Well, shit, yeah, I guess I did. I told her she was pretty, she kind of liked it. Why? He said, well, I asked you a question. Did you give her my name instead of your name? And I go, oh shit, yeah, I did do that. I did. He said, well, thanks, old buddy. I just got this here letter, and she just died and left me everything on the ranch. About 5 of us old boys from South Texas, every year we go to Bandera. Anybody been up to Bandera? Beautiful area up there. And they have bike week up Bandera every year. We go up there, we camp out along the river, And we set up our tents, drink beer, chase women, do whatever guys do at Bike Week. And last year, getting ready to go to Bike Week at Bandera, and my buddy's wife, Alice, said, "You ain't going this year." Now, he'd been going for 25 years. We were all disappointed. Alice wasn't going to let him go, but you know, what the hell can we do? That's his wife. So we get up to Bandera, finally, and we're all disappointed he couldn't go long, but we get to Bandera. We pull into our usual parking spot and set up our tents, and I looked over. I go, damn, that looks like old Red's Harley. I wonder if somebody stole that damn thing. And I looked over, there by a campfire in a tent was old Red. I walked over and I go, "Oh, Red, I thought Alice wasn't going to let you come. What happened?" "Well," he said, "last night I was sitting in my recliner. And I was sitting there just reading the Harley magazine. And Alice come up behind me, put her hands over my eyes. And she said, 'Guess who?' I pulled her hands off my eyes, and I turned around and looked. There she was in this real sheer red negligee. She took me by the hand, led me in the bedroom. We went in the bedroom. There's candles, rose petals, everywhere. On the bed is a pair of pink fur-lined handcuffs and some black silk rope. Alice looked at me and said, "Tie me up and then tie me to the bed." So I did. I tied her up, tied her to the bed. Then Alice looked at me and she said, "Okay, big boy, you can do whatever you want to now." So I hopped on the Harley and rode up here last night. Any of you been to the Silver Dollar Saloon up in the Stockyards up in Fort Worth? Oh, you guys travel. I like you guys. I like to go up there when I'm up that way. There isn't a lot of real bikers go up there because it's kind of expensive. And but I like to go because the girls dress up in some skimpy stuff. Now I know real cowgirls wear jeans and cowgirl boots and blouses, but these little girls have on short miniskirts and little frilly blouses. And I like to go up there and just see the girls. So I was up there a while back, and I walked in, paid the cover charge, and I looked over and I saw the blonde over there, and she had on some really soft-looking leathers. Oh, damn, that's a nice-looking female. I'll go over and hit on her like I've never hit on blonde before, right?
Right.
So I walk over that way. About the time I get to her table, the waitress, Betty Sue, come up and said, "Hey, Chopper, you want a Kentucky Sour Mash or you want a long neck?" I said, "Give me a Kentucky Sour Mash over ice, and this here lady, whatever she's a-drinking." So I sat down and introduced myself. I've had people ask me, said, "Well, how do people know who you are?" I go, "Right there, and it's on my shirt pocket." So I introduced myself to her. And I said, "Are you a local biker?" She goes, "No, I'm not a biker at all." I said, "Well, you got on them leathers, you look like a biker." She said, "No, I'm not a biker. I'm a lesbo." I said, "A what?" She said, "A lesbo." I go, well, what's a lesbo?" She said, "You know, a lesbian." I said, "Well, I'm a South Texas boy. I don't know anything about that. How does that work?" She said, "Well, us lesbians, we think about females 24 hours a day. I get up in the morning, first thought that pops in my mind is females. All day at work, I envision naked females tied down to my bed." I go, "Whoa." So just then a couple guys walked up and they go, "Hey, I saw you ride up on your bike. That's a nice Harley. Are you a real biker?" I go, "Well, I thought I was. I just found out I'm a lesbian." Now that this guy has moved out, I'll tell this story. There was a guy here at the RV park that had went to the doctor back in January, and he come back. We were here on Friday night on happy hour. So he's sitting over here at the table, about right over here, and he's bragging that he just got a clean bill of health from his doctor, and he's looking pretty good for a man that's going to be 64 his next birthday. So somebody said, "Well, Chopper's 70, going to be 71 his next birthday." And he looked at me and goes, "Whoa." He goes, well, how long do the men in your family live? I said, well, most of the time men in my family live into the 90s, as long as some woman don't kill them first. And he said, most of the men in my family die before they're 80. He said, do you think I'll live to be 80? I said, well, let me ask you a question. Do you drink hard liquor and beer and stuff like that, moonshine? He goes, oh, no. He said, I don't ever do any of that kind of stuff. I said, well, do you eat fried chicken and ribs and Mexican food and stuff like that? And he goes, oh, no. He said, I don't ever eat that kind of stuff. That's unhealthy. And so I said, well, do you chase women? He goes, oh, no. He said, I don't do that no more. I go, why in the hell would you want to live to be 80 anyway? Got thrown out of Walmart today. I was looking for some stuff for a friend, and I walked by where the women try on clothes, and I saw this woman. I don't know how old she was. I suppose she was about 50. When you get up my age, it's kind of hard to judge. And she's over there with a girlfriend, and she's in front of the mirror, and she's got on these, I don't remember what they're called, but they're stretchy jean pants. They're made out of a stretchy material. And she's up in the mirror, and she's doing this, and she's admiring her hind end in the mirror. And she said, not a bad looking ass for 50, is it? I go, huh, what a coincidence. I just think the same thing. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have a special treat tonight. And she's the pinup girl for Tattooed Muscle Menzies magazine. She's the reincarnation of Mae West, showgirl extraordinaire, creator of the burnt crisp same-day casserole, the lady often mentioned daily in the prayers of the Pope, Lips LaRue from Kalamazoo. I thought I'd share a little wisdom that I gained from Lips LaRue. I asked Lips, I said, I got a friend that had a bad cough. What do you think we ought to do? Lips said, give him a lot of X-Lax. I go, X-Lax, does that help with a cough? She goes, nope, but it sure as hell keeps him from coughing. And then I said to Lips one time, I said, okay, I got a question. I know you're a cook and you invented the same-day burnt casserole, but I'm wondering, how do you chop all those vegetables without cutting your fingers? She said, it's easy, silly boy. You get somebody else to hold the vegetables. Okay, now Lips, do you want to tell them about you want me to tell them about your 4 marriages? See, Lips was married 4 times. She didn't want everybody to know this, but she was married.
He wasn't supposed to tell this story.
She was married 4 times. The first time Lips was married, she was married to a banker. The second time, she was married to a ringmaster at a circus. The third time, a Baptist preacher. And just 2 weeks ago, she married an undertaker. And I said, Lips, 4 times and 4 men with totally different careers? She said, of course. A banker, circus man,
yeah,
a preacher, and an undertaker. 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready, and 4 to go. Okay, Lips LaRue. Very good, ladies. We loved it. Thank you. I just thought of something I kind of about half forgot. When I got, a lot of you know I've been married twice. I wasn't very good at it, so I quit doing that. But I got divorced from my first wife, and she married another guy. And my daughter was about, I suppose, 5 or 6 years old. And she went to spend a long weekend with him. So she come back, and I was kind of curious what this new guy was like. So I asked her, I said, what's he like? She said, oh, Daddy, I was in the shower with him. He ain't nothing like you. I'm going, oh, shit, here we go. Cat's out of the bag now. She said, Daddy, he don't have any hair on his legs. The things kids see, right? Old biker's poem? No. Well, last week, somebody said to me, Chopper, why don't you tell everybody about the story about how you got your biker handle, Chopper Charlie, and how you ended up on your very first bike being a pink Harley. So I thought, okay, I don't want to tell the whole story because if I go into the whole thing in detail, it's quite lengthy. But I'll just give you a brief synopsis. I think everybody knows back in 1958, I discovered girls. And I discovered girls had been busy growing themselves some nice plaything called Hooters. And I said to myself, I need to get me some wheels. Because if I have some wheels, I can get a bigger area covered, find more girls, increase the chances of getting my grubby little hands on some more of them Hooters. So I wanted to buy me a bike. Well, I had a buddy, his name was Jerry. His daddy and his older brother and his mom all rode Harleys. So I went down to Jerry to get some advice from the most experienced biker I knew. So while I was down there, Jerry told me, he said, we'll just take the bikes out for a ride. I said, okay. I don't know if I talked him into it or he talked me into it. So Jerry got on his daddy's bike, I got on his brother's Dick's bike, and Jerry said, I'm going to teach you everything you ever need to know about a motorcycle. He said, left hand's a clutch, right hand's a brake, first gear's down, the rest of them's up. Oh, well, shit, I'm ready to rock and roll now, let's ride. So we get out, we do a ride. I don't think I ever shifted. I get back, there's Jerry's daddy. He was like an old World War I and World War II veteran. Dog-faced, broad-shouldered, well-muscled from years of hard labor. Jerry thought his daddy was working, but Jerry was wrong. So I thought, oh shit, we're dead now. So he looked at us boys and he said, boys, he said, I'm going to tell you something. If you're going to ride them damn bikes, there's a couple things you need to know. Number one, motorcycles are like rattlesnakes. If you trust them, they'll bite you. If you don't trust them, they'll bite you anyway. And the other thing is this. Never, ever, ever ride another man's motorcycle or his woman. It'll get you killed. And I remember that all my life. So I decided I need to get me a motorcycle. Well, Harleys were pretty expensive, so I started watching the paper. I had just about $100. And looked like all the Harleys that were for sale back in 1958 was over $100, and I couldn't afford them, or there was something wrong with them. I finally found a bike. The guy wanted $110 for it. It needed a little bit of work, like paint job, but it run. So I went over and looked at it. So I asked him, I said, you do a little trade? He said, oh yeah. He said, what do you got? And I said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll give you $90 cash, a shotgun, a box of double-aught buck shells, and a jackknife. The guy said, okay, I'll take that trade. So I got myself a Harley. Now this Harley was pretty rough looking. It had been altered by a guy by the name of Sonny Barger. Now some of you may not know who he was. Back then I did not know. But Sonny Barger was the man that started Hell's Angels in Los Angeles, California right after World War II. But his little brother had painted this bike and it looked like shit. So I thought, it don't make no difference. I'm going to ride it, scratch it up anyway. So I went out and I rode this bike. And I practiced and I learned and I finally got so I could ride it. And a buddy of mine named Steve was an experienced mechanic and he could paint. Now Steve lived out on the farm and he had painted his daddy's dump truck and a John Deere tractor. So man, this guy was a professional painter. He's going to paint my bike look like a show bike. So I saved up my money and I went down to Myers Hardware and I bought a pint of China Red, and I'm going to do the frame, the fenders, the tank, and in the China Red, and I'm going to do the wheels and the trim in pearl white. Now pearl white was pretty cheap back then, but just like today, China Red is pretty expensive. I was like $12 for China Red, $2 for the pearl white. So we get all ready to paint, and it's on a Saturday before Memorial Day. So we go down to Dickie Parlett's place, and we're getting some parts that had sandblasted. And it's like 5:30 in the afternoon, and Steve tells Dickie, he said, we're going to paint old Chopper's bike. And he said, you are? He said, yeah. And he said, it's going to look pretty cool. It's going to be China red and white. So Dick said, well, what are you going to paint red? He said, we're going to do the fenders and the gas tank and the frame in red, and we're going to do the wheels and all the trim in white. He said, well, how much paint you boys got? So we got a pint each. He said, oh, no. He said, you got plenty of white, but you don't have enough red. So we're in a big predicament now. So we go out to the barn. It's starting to get dark. And this old barn's got 200-watt light bulbs about 35 feet in the air. And Steve and I are talking. I said, what are we going to do? Steve said, well, we got a little of that green left over from when I painted Daddy's John Deere tractor. What happens if we mix a little green in with that China red? We'll see what we get. So we mix a little green in there, a little China red, put it on a piece of paper, walk outside in the fading light. Oh shit, puke knuckle yellow. That ain't gonna work. So we go back in, and he said, you know what? We got Ford blue. I painted Daddy's dump truck. So we take a little Ford blue, a little China red, we mix it all together. Now we got Meta Puzzle purple. I'm going, nah, I ain't riding no purple bike. So then Steve said, hey, wait a minute, I got an idea. When I did the John Deere tractor, Daddy had some dark gray primer. Gray is a shade of black, right? I go, well, hell yeah, you know, I'm like 15 years old, Steve's like 16 or 17. So yeah, gray is a shade of black. He said, let's mix the red with the gray primer. He said, that'll probably make a darker red, won't it? I go, yeah, sounds good to me. And then when we're all done, we're going to put the white left over back in. That should take it back to China red. Now don't you all be laughing. So here we are, two young boys in this barn in the dark. I swear to God, we thought that bike was going to drive some other color than pink. But here I was, the Saturday night before Memorial Day, with a pink motorcycle. And I had a date on Monday with this gal named Elaine, and she had herself some nice Hooters. So I said, I got two choices. I can't afford no more paint. I can let the bike sit in the garage, or I can go out and try to get my hands on some Hooters. So I put that motorcycle together, and I rode that motorcycle for over a year. I learned several things. Number one, girls like pink Harleys. Number two, I learned never go to the biker bars on a pink Harley. And number three, never go downtown to the Rescuer where the female impersonators hang out, because damn it, they love guys on pink Harleys. So I rode that thing around called the Hooter scooter, and it was kind of chopped up because it was one of the early choppers back then. And a couple of buddies of mine run into me at the Dairy Queen. And Steve said, well, Chopper, your bike's all chopped up. It looks different than anything I ever seen. I said, I like it chopped up. So Mikey said, well, we're just going to have to start calling you Chopped Up Charlie. So they started out calling me Chopped Up Charlie, but it wasn't very long. People around town started calling me Chopper Charlie. So that's how I got my handle, Chopper Charlie. And that's the story of how in the hell a guy learned to fight, is because he rode a damn pink Harley. So thank you everybody for coming. We had a good time tonight. Anybody else wants to do a joke or story or whatever? How about you, Lip Maru? You got another one? God, woman, I love your lipstick. If you ever go for husband number 5, you come see me. Okay, we got